Late at night, a young boy kneeling before a woman asks for her forgiveness. The lady with the long hair tells him whether the boy thinks his apology is enough. The woman claims that because he broke her vase and asks if he's considered a good child. The boy talks in despair about how he didn't mean to do it. The lady grabs the boy by the neck and pulls him to the gate. The boy, shrieking, apologizes to his mother. The woman opened the gate and threw the desperate boy out and at the same time said she wasn't going to do it twice. The lady with the long hair turns to the boy and angrily tells him to get out of the house. A young boy standing alone outside the gates of his house and looking sadly about him. The main character sitting at the table closes the book because she can't read any more about it. The girl talks about how no matter how much she tries, she can't get used to this stupid story. The main character of the villain of the story, Layla Marshmallow, is a beautiful girl who was born a commoner. Layla was loved by everyone for her gentle nature. She was to become the concubine of the village lord because of her beauty. However, a few days before the wedding, a man from another world entered her body. Taking possession of Layla's body, the girl immediately fled the village. A former village sweetheart seduced Earl Marsh-Chalk, the young earl's son, and a wealthy divorced man. Layla got married and lived life to the fullest. But unexpectedly after the wedding, Earl Marsh-Chalk fell ill and died. The main character inherits the mansion and ends up bullying the Count's son and eventually kicks him out of the house. Poor boy, thought the young girl, for if she had been Layla, she would have behaved very differently. The concerned girl thinks about the fact that this woman really deserves to die. Suddenly, the girl was distracted by the oven beeping, and she remembered that she had put bread in the oven. Looking into the middle of the oven, the woman thinks about what a great cooked by how much the dough has risen well. The young lady is thinking about the fact that all she has to do is coat it with chocolate, and it will be a yummy treat that can be eaten soon. Suddenly, the girl heard someone banging on the door very hard and shouting loudly to let her open it. The lady thought she would be blown away today since she was a victim of domestic violence. Drunk father standing under the door, screaming for his daughter to open it, and so the girl moved several times to avoid his drunken visits. The young lady can't understand and how her father found her. How many times had he come to beg her for money again? Standing by the oven, the girl thinks about not paying attention to him. Suddenly, there was a very violent explosion in the room as the furnace exploded, and red flames enveloped the entire room. The pain of burning covered the girl's entire body, and her lungs were filled with the pungent smell of black smog. The last minutes of her life, the girl realized that she had lived it terribly. Opened her eyes, the protagonist did not realize where she was and thought she was in heaven. Looking at the light through her fingers, the young lady, not believing it because she had been bullying people all her life. Suddenly, a maid comes up to the girl and turns to her and says that there has been a bit of a commotion. From the maid, the protagonist heard that her name was Mrs. Marsh-Chalk, and this name surprised her very much. The young lady looked at herself in the mirror and saw luxurious hair and amethyst-colored eyes. She thought her beautiful appearance was like a gorgeous lily of the valley. Countess Layla Marsh-Chalk is the girl who bakes bread because of the accident that got into her body. The main character didn't even think about the fact that she would really become Layla. The girl's thoughts were suddenly roused from her mind by a maid who asked if she was all right. The young lady thought about the fact that she needed to pack or she would be considered insane. The protagonist looked at the maid and asked what was wrong. The maid says worriedly that Mr. Hiri is not feeling well. The girl reassures herself with thoughts since she is now the Countess of Marshmallow and asks the servants if the boy is not feeling well. Excitedly, the maid asks the Countess if she should do the usual. The main character looks at her surprised and asks about what she did before since she doesn't remember anything. The maid talks about Layla locking the room until the boy is completely cured. The young lady says she is going to Hiri's immediately. Layla asks the maid why she doesn't show her where to go. The surprised maid apologized and quickly led the Countess to the boy's room. On a large bed, the young lady saw a boy who was lying in bed. The girl anxiously called his name, and the boy looked at her in surprise, calling her mom. A young girl addressing the boy saying that she had heard that he was not feeling well, and questioning whether something was hurting him. The boy apologizes worriedly because he has upset her because he has no pain. And in that moment, the protagonist saw how much pain she had caused that child, since the boy was very excited and it was like he was expecting something bad. Her, who grew up in hell, will become emperor and execute the Countess of Marshmallow. He overcame the hardships of the past and executed the perfect revenge. The protagonist kept wondering if Heer would be satisfied. Unlike him, however, she was unable to fight back against her father. It is at this time that the Countess can help the boy. Layla asks the maid why the boy is so thin, and the worried woman replies that the young boy hasn't eaten in days. The protagonist hears about it and tells them to bring the boy some food immediately. Layla walked over to the young man and hugged him, thinking that he really wasn't feeling well since he was on fire. When he saw the Countess, the boy immediately began to shriek and apologize, as he was sorry because he had done nothing and did not want to get in the way. The main character, comforting the boy, explains to him that she came because she heard that he was sick. However, the boy does not have to apologize to her. Concerned, the young man says he faked it and made his mom worry and asks for forgiveness again. Layla looks at the boy and thinks about the fact that he has been through a lot of pain, and he's apologizing for it. The Countess, turning to the boy, says that she forbids him to apologize because it's all right, and he shouldn't be worried about being sick. The protagonist thinks about finding a cold towel, and looking around the room she noticed that it was very dirty, and you could pick up something in it. Layla thinks about the boy's room needing to be cleaned. Pouring water from a pitcher, the girl asks Hira if he has been drinking this water. The boy excitedly replies that he drank the water and apologizes since he thought it was okay to do so. The maid but brought soup for the young gentleman, and the Countess announced that she would feed the boy. Hearing this, the maid was very surprised and suggested that she would feed the boy herself. The protagonist remembers that the original maid also abused the child. However, if Mrs. Marshmallow was simply ignoring here, the maid was simply harassing the child at this time. Lila sees what the maid has brought and thinks it's inedible, takes the bowl and throws it at the maid and demands that she bring a better dish. The maid follows orders and brings a very tasty soup, and at this time the Countess demands that she bring the boy a drink, a wet towel, and medicine. A concerned maid informs the lady that they have no medicine for the children in the house. Layla angrily demands that she go out and buy them. Hearing this, the maid is surprised, and the protagonist asks her if she doubts her instructions. The Countess took the soup and crouched down beside the boy and began to feed him. She realizes that here is already starting to grow thorns, since everyone in the mansion had become enemies to him. As he ages, the thorns of his pain will only become sharper. However, there is one person who can help Hiru. Duke Lasius Hupert is Hir's godfather, and the protagonist thinks about letting him be close to the boy because her embrace left him with only cold memories, and he can overcome it. A maid enters the room and announces that she has gotten the adult medicine. Layla saw that the water had run out and told the maid to fetch it. The Countess looks at the servant and thinks about the fact that you can tell by the look on her face that she doesn't understand anything about what's going on. However, even in front of the madam, he can't hide his displeasure. Layla realizes that the maid is very foolish for not noticing how her mistress has changed. The maid walking up the stairs thinks that the Countess first wants to inspire hope and then trample the buds that will open in the hope of salvation. The main character asks the maid what she's doing and why she didn't clean up the broken plate. The maid is slow and reluctant to clean the room, and the mistress tells her that if she continues like this, she can get out of the mansion quickly. Concerned, the maid asks Mrs. Marshmallow what she means by this, for she is the most devoted maid, and she doesn't want to leave because she thinks it's unfair. Layla removes her earrings and presents them to the servants. The girl is shocked because the Countess gave her favorite earrings. But then she thought that by doing so, the Countess meant to surprise her. However, the protagonist, turning to the maid, tells her to choose either she will be kicked out for stealing from her mistress or she will leave on her own. The main character, turning to the boy and apologizing since he was startled by the noise. Since it's very messy, she suggests we go to her room. The young lady takes the boy in her arms and carries him down the hall. She's thinking about protecting him today, to make him happy. Put the child to bed, the Countess wished him sweet dreams at this time. The boys thanked her, and she made remarks to him since I have to get up if he's sick. The Countess turns to the head maid of the mansion, informing her that her maid has left the mansion because she robbed the mistress, and she's telling Jane to tell everyone about it. The main character thinks about the fact that she can't just let go of whoever abused her child. Layla, I was instructing the maid to assign the best room in the mansion to hire. The Countess announces that from now on she is not going to stand by and watch the boy being abused, and Jane must get the word out to all the servants. The young lady says to prepare her carriage as she is going to visit Duke Hupert. Let me ask the Countess what kind of things she's holding. The girl replies that it's bait for the monster. The maid thinks about the Countess leaving so suddenly without an invitation. However, Duke Lysias is a cold-blooded devil who hates women, and they all surround him. Duke Hubert is little known as he does not appear in social circles, and he is quite handsome, and this is not an exaggeration. Layla had already prepared herself for a cold reception since he wasn't expecting her. The girl realizes that at least once, but she must see the one who will become the cross father of Hira. Arriving at her destination, the Countess stepped out of the carriage and saw a large mansion, but suddenly she sees a guy and tells him she's come to see Duke Hubert. A strange man asks her if she's made an appointment. The protagonist says, "Let the man tell Lassius that Layla has arrived." Guy says he has to report to the Duke first and have the girl wait a minute. Going to the Duke, he thinks, such an angel can't lie. A young lady waiting at the gate, and suddenly it started raining. After a while, a man approached her and motioned for her to go inside. Coming into the house, the guy informs that he has brought a lady, and the girl notices that it is not the living room because she is immediately led to a private office. At first, she thought she was running into the lion's cage, but she changed her mind quite soon, because she was met by a very handsome man. Layla thought about him being a real lion, however. The Duke turned out to be an affectionate cat. However, the girl realizes why the princess was constantly chasing him since he shines like the sun. Lassius looks at the girl and says she's soaked through and suggests, "Hey, take off her jacket." The Duke says he didn't promise anything either, but they came so quietly since she knows him well. The protagonist thought about Hertz scoffed, but didn't give the appearance she apologized. "You say that otherwise they would never have seen each other." The girl asks if he knew what she had gathered and why she was let in. Lassius replies that many ladies are interested in him, but she's the first to act like this, and he was curious. The man touches her face and tells her she has a pretty face. Herzog states that he doesn't like it when beauties turn ugly, and it would be great if he could get a proper response. He smiles soapily, but his eyes give him away as Duke Hubert. Layla turns to the man saying she has suggestions for him and have him sit down. The Duke agrees with the girl. In the original, Lassius had no interest in women, and he hated anyone who followed him around. The protagonist thinks that if she can't convince him, she's in a lot of trouble. However, the girl thinks about that, and it's a good thing since she's familiar with the plot. Layla asks if the Duke has a spy in the mansion. Lassius is currently suffering through the loss of the precious mine, and Layla talks about how she heard that the precious mine was given to the Hillen family. However, because of the spy, the Hubert family suffered many losses. A surprised Duke says that he doesn't think she just guessed every little detail, and it seems to him that this rat is also selling information. The girl says it doesn't matter now because she can catch that rat, and informs her that she can still get back the mine he gave to Hillen. Lassius doesn't understand how it can be done. Layla, in order to convince the Duke, shows his plans for the future that she has written on pieces of paper and offers to read and draw conclusions. However, judging by the plot, the protagonist can deduce from the spy and the people he communicated with and all the information passed on. The young lady can exploit the Hillen family's weaknesses and reclaim the mine. It's not that hard because reading the story over and over again is her only happiness, and the main character kept thinking how to make Hira happier. After reading the text, Lassius asks if this is all reliable information and where she got it from. The girl replies since she can't tell, however, can guarantee that she can be trusted, however she still has nothing to lose. The surprised Duke asks why she would help him, and he assumes that the girl wants something in return. Layla says that of course she wants to sign a prenuptial agreement with him too. The protagonist notices that the Duke is worried and coaxes him to sign, since 1 year will be enough time to execute this prenuptial agreement. Hira was thrown out on the street by his stepmother and found by Lassius. Layla thinks about the fact that there's no way she'd kick him out, and yet she can't live with him forever. Forgetting the fact that she's caught up in the case of a man who constantly bullied him, the girl thinks that her presence only makes him feel worse. The protagonist thinks of arranging a meeting between them so that the baby can become an heir, just like in the story. The young girl says the Duke will understand everything when he reads it, but he'll need the help of the Marshmallow family to get the mine back. However, it is much easier to get a pass after marriage than to buy one. Layla suggests to the man that they can divorce as soon as everything is settled, and let him agree since she will be gone within a year. And let the Duke just act like they're really married. The protagonist, addressing the Duke, says that it is all the same since he is not interested in women, and therefore he will not fall in love with her. However, the same is true for her. Lassius wonders if the girl has no feelings for him. She replies that she feels nothing for him, and if he is interested in another woman, he can safely date her. The Duke says he's only interested in the treaty, and Smiles asserts that these are intriguing propositions, but he doesn't understand why a girl would want a contract for only a year's marriage. Lasius asks if she is interested in the mere fact of marital relations with him. The girl thinks about the fact that she actually wants the Duke to adopt here, but however, if she says so, she will be even more suspicious. Layla says that she will tell everything a little later since it seems that the Duke doesn't trust her. However, she will find the spy and prove that she can be trusted. The Duke agrees and says that they are now partners and offers a cup of tea which smells delicious. However, the girl refuses and is going to leave because she has a child waiting for her at home. When a handsome man was alone and thought he had met an interesting girl who was not at all afraid to be around him, and he wonders how this marriage will end. Arriving home, the main character is met by a maid who informs her that they have changed the boy's room and invites her to take a look. Upon entering Hira's room, the maid speaks about picking the sunniest room. Seeing the boy, Layla asks how long he has been asleep, and the maid tells her that he fell asleep as soon as he took the medicine, and it seems to have worked well on him. The main character talks about how relieved she is since she was worried it was only going to get worse. Jane, looking at her mistress and thinking that she has changed since she suddenly fired the maid, and by doing so she is up to something. Suddenly, the mistress asks the head maid if she can take a closer look at the boy, and Jane replies that of course she can, since she is his mother. Stepping closer to Hiru, the young girl looks at him and can't believe that such a sweet child would become a tyrant. However, upon touching the boy, Layla noticed that he was very hot and took a wet towel and put it on him. Coming into the kitchen, the young girl asks if there is an oven. A surprised Jane asks if her mistress is going to cook. Layla says she wants to cook something for here and don't let Jane worry since she'll make a yummy treat. The main character has prepared a dessert, which is left only to bake, and suddenly she hears some incomprehensible in sounds, and the maid at this time agrees to check what is going on there. Layla heard the maid addressing the Countess saying that she should have planned the meeting in advance. However, in response, the woman cries out that she doesn't need to make arrangements with anyone to visit her own son's house and demands that the maid leave. In the original, Countess Fasha Marshmal was Layla's mother-in-law. She was a woman who was not in the least disturbed by the death of her son, and she suddenly showed up at his house claiming wealth. Countess Farsha cries out that she cannot give her inheritance to such a man. Having calmed down a little, the Countess, turning to her sister-in-law, compliments her on her beauty, but then says that a widow should sit quietly in a black dress. However, she doesn't have that outfit, calling the girl a witch who is proud of herself for getting rid of her son. The story said that the Earl of Marshmal died of a venereal disease, and his wife was a villain who did not hesitate to get rid of her husband. Layla asks the Countess why she came to see her, and she doubts it's just for the sake of humiliating her. Fasha says this is the first time the girl has turned her brain on and she's here for the inheritance, and wonders if the widow thinks she'll be swimming in luxury when she dies. The protagonist replies that since she doesn't know if she can stay in the mansion, but the lands belong to her and her son Hiru. Hearing this, Fasha cries out that everything here belongs to their family and questions how dare she squeeze away the Count's possession. Layla replies that it's the Countess who's squeezing his possession away, and she's only enforcing Earl Marshmal's will. The girl thought about the fact that the Countess of the mansion cared more about the mansion than her son. However, Fasha could not find the will for the reason that in the original, Layla took her husband's will and hid it well. However, thanks to Layla's misadventures, Here is able to inherit the estate. The protagonist reports that the will is kept in the Bank of Akabalt, and she simply cannot forge it. Abbott, how much to this bank even know is not easy to get to. Fasha is well aware that it is impossible to create fake meetings. The girl asks if she wants to see with her own eyes, since she can send the archival records to her mansion. Lila, enjoying a tea party, thinks about how it went too well since she is already familiar with the plot. But for her, it's even more peaceful because Here helps her to cope with her difficulties and she dreams that he is happy. Sitting at the table with the boy, the Countess looked at him and thought how cute he was, but suddenly the boy coughed. The young lady worriedly asked if everything was all right and offered him a drink of milk. Excitedly, the boy apologizes to his mother as he caused Layla to lose her appetite as she didn't even touch her food. After all, he's sitting across from me. The main character rose to think that the boy thought she wasn't eating soup because of him. However, she hadn't thought things through very well. Layla thinks about how she can never make him happy, as long as she is in her stepmother's body. The Countess decides to show Hiru some sincerity, and turning to the boy says it's okay, and he doesn't need to apologize. The young girl thinks about the fact that the boy is already broken by Layla's indifference, and she is determined to make him happy without even apologizing once. Moving closer to Hiru, the protagonist apologizes to him. She says she was indifferent to him all this time and let the maids abuse him. Layla promises the boy she won't hurt him again. It doesn't sound very convincing, however, but let Hir try to trust her. The boy looks earnestly at the young lady, for he had never heard her say such words before. The Countess didn't even think Hir would open up after one apology. And further, she wants to give him a happy life full of love and affection. Holding the boy's hand, the protagonist claims she will do anything to make him happy and vows to do so. Layla offers the boy a chin strap, and after trying it on Hir, says he likes it. The Countess says he looks very healthy and nice. A surprised Hir thinks about the fact that his mom is suddenly so nice to him, and he hopes it will always be that way. Upon arriving at Lysias's home, the Countess says it went pretty quickly, and the spy immediately disappeared. However, he's probably smart or just has a good chuja. But still, she attacked the trail spy. Layla offered to read the sheet in which she described his movements in great detail, and she thinks the spy might escape soon. The Duke asks the young girl what she is going to do. The girl replies that they need to catch him. Lysias thinks it would be interesting and suggests we do it together. The young lady asks if the Duke is busy. At this time, the gentleman replies that he is free, and the girl thinks about the fact that he is lying. The Duke says the spy probably didn't come here to play games, and he thinks he has a meeting with someone. The girl agrees with him and suggests going to the VIP section on the second floor. Upon arriving at the stairs, they are met by a guard, and the Duke explains to him that he has a little business on the second floor. The guard asks who's next to the Duke. The man hugs the girl and says it's his wife. The protagonist says it's good that they went together, however she was by no means missed. Coming to a place of pre-meaning, Duke asks if she will open the door. The girl thinks she can do everything according to plan. However, in the original, Lysias had a lot of problems due to spies reselling information about the duchy to third parties. The weakened duchy had quite fallen into decay, and at the moment when it was left without an heir, Hir appeared, abandoned by Madame Marshmallow. In this way, Hir became heir to the duchy, and if Layla marries Lysias, Hir will immediately become an adopted son. The protagonist thinks about how it wouldn't be a big deal if the spy escaped. Opening the doors, they saw the spy, who immediately rushed out running. However, the Duke argues that escape is futile, and the spy grabs Layla. A strange man has grabbed the protagonist by the neck and is now shouting for the Duke to stay away, or he will finish her off. Lysias turns to the girl to reassure her, and she replies that she is fine. The spy threatens that since he's already caught her, one more step, and she's dead. The strange man thinks that since he has been discovered, the Duke will do anything to get rid of him. And he thinks that this girl is an important person since he is so quiet. The spy thinks that now that he has her as a hostage, he can get rid of the Duke. Layla points out to the Duke that he turned around and closed his eyes. Meanwhile, Lysias turns around and thinks about the fact that she's going to kill him, and he doesn't want to take his life for her. The Duke ponders whether to take a chance on this girl, but he doesn't really want to. At this time, the protagonist dodges the spy and pushes him. Crouching on the floor, she thinks she's not afraid of pain and threats. According to how much she was constantly bullied by her father in her past life, and she just has to catch the spy and make the boy happy. Duke decides he can sacrifice one arm, and at this time turns around and sees Layla taking out the knife from the spy. Lysias quickly grabs the strange man and lays him on the floor, pressing him down with his body. The Duke, turning to the Countess, says he'll handle everything else, because he doesn't want her to be a witness. Lysias, turning to the spy, said that only a few minutes ago he was so confident, and asks if he enjoyed selling the information. Information. A strange man realizes his mistake and asks to be spared. Lysias says that since he has already made a mistake, let him not even think of begging him for mercy, and he should have been prepared for that outcome. The Duke asks the spy who's covering for him if he wants to live, let him tell him the truth. The protagonist thinks of Lysias coping alone since she had a gash on her arm. The spy at the time thinks he can't tell who's behind it because if they find out he's told them everything, it'll be even worse. Stranger makes decisions, and finishes himself off. Lasius sees this and says that he wasn't going to kill the spy without getting an answer, and who would have thought he would kill himself? Seeing the girl, the Duke thought that Layla's wounds needed to be healed first. Fortunately, however, the girl's wound was not very deep. The Duke asks why she did it, and the girl thought that was a question she couldn't answer since she couldn't say it was for here's sake. Lasius looks at the main character and says he likes her balderdash, but he doesn't want to buy into it. He thanked her and told her not to do it again. Layla claims she's the reason he caught the spy, and that's a victory. The Count says it's strange to him, but he doesn't want to see her suffer. And the thing is, she's going to be his wife. The protagonist thinks about Lachius always being this kind of person, but he was described as a cold-blooded man. After bandaging the wound, the girl thanked the Duke, and he responded by saying that he was not to be thanked since she had hurt herself because of him. Layla says he not only helped her bandage her wound, but also went with her to catch the spy. The Count says it's nothing. Lasius thinks about the fact that girls often told him that he was handsome, but he felt nothing, and the Duke doesn't understand why he was so excited by her words. The young Duke doesn't understand anything, but the mere thought of this woman makes him feel strange. Standing on the balcony of her mansion, the girl noticed a white dove with a telegram attached to it. After reading the letter, which was about when she would come because he misses her and is waiting for her return, the girl thought Lasius might have written it, but the words seemed strange to her. Layla thought about how he was like a puppy missing its master. Still, she was just about to visit him, and she feels like it happened even better. The protagonist scribbled back a letter asking if she could come this evening and pinned it to the dove. Bird quickly handed over a letter which the Duke read and wrote that he didn't mind and let her come any time. The Countess ordered the maid to prepare the carriage as she was on her way to Duke Hubert's mansion. Jane responds by not thinking there is any need to cook anything and suggests the girl look outside. Layla looked out the window and saw a whole floral carriage, and the maid tells her that Duke Hubert sent it. The protagonist says that this carriage was definitely not there and thinks about Lasius being a romantic. Layla says she's going to pack and tell the coachman to get ready to leave. Arriving at the mansion, she is greeted by the Duke, who says he has been waiting for her. He asks if her hand is in order. The girl replies that it's already much better. Lasius happily says he's glad to hear, and she has no idea how freaked out he was about his wife not sending him word. The girl replies that he's lying, at which time her master asks her why she thinks that. The main character says he looks like her puppy. The Count, clarifying, asks if it's a male. The lady replies that on the girl. At this time, the Duke says that he finds him as a man not so attractive. The Countess gives him the contract and invites him to read it and ask her questions. The Count objects because he doesn't want to discuss work, at which point the young lady asks what they should talk about then. Lasius is happy to ask, let her tell what she's been doing all this time. The girl looked at him and wondered if he was interested, but since his face says so, she has to answer. The Countess reports that she baked cookies and also made macaroons. The young gentleman asks the girl if she likes sweets and if she cooks them herself. The young lady replies that she likes sweets, but she hasn't eaten them since she made them for one person as well. Suddenly, Lasius wonders who she made it for. Hearing that, the girl thought it was a strange reaction since she hadn't said anything like that. The young man asks who she could give the candy to since he didn't get any. As he likes sweets, the girl promised that the next time she baked cookies, she would send them to him. Duke wonders who she gave the pastries to this time. Layla replies that she gave it to Hiru because he really likes sweets. Upon hearing the man's name, the Duke became very agitated, and it was evident by his hand, which tensed. The protagonist claims it's her son, who will soon be his son. However, the Duke sighs with pleasure and says that he had forgotten that the girl had mentioned a son. Layla looks at the guy and thinks he's the Duke from the novel because he's so different. The Countess proposes to discuss a contract that will be valid for 1 year with only one stipulation. The girl says he should adopt Hira and see the boy as an heir and his own son. Thanks to his upbringing, Hira will get a ring just like in the original. Then Lasius will accept the young master as his own son. Lasius agrees, and the protagonist informs him that he can add his own terms. With great pleasure, the Duke talks about wanting to agree not to meet other people, and offers to act like a real couple. Layla thinks about the fact that she doesn't care about other men anyway, or she agrees with the Duke. Suddenly, Lasius gives the girl a piece of paper with something written on it. The protagonist asks what it is. The Duke says she has to sign the marriage certificate. A surprised Layla asks about whether they have to report to the state, how much of a divorce you'll have to get in a year. The young man says that if you're going to do it, you have to do it by the book, and he wasn't going to get married, but he's going to try it for a year. The concerned girl thinks about the fact that marriage requires a certificate and picks up a quill. Suddenly, a woman bursts into the room before the newlyweds, who is very excited and cries out whether it is true that he is getting married. The woman in the red dress is Lacius's mother, Duchess Hupert. Layla thinks about what she will do if the Duke's mother opposes her, and it might interfere with the engagement. Duchess Hupert looks at the main character and asks if this is the woman her son will marry. The young lady looks at the Duchess in surprise and says yes, but since she hasn't signed the contract yet, the girl apologizes for not giving notice. The Duchess says enough of this chatter and orders the men who are carrying the gifts to enter the room. Lacius's mother argues about not welcoming a daughter-in-law empty-handed. She asks what kind of shoes or dress girls like. The Duchess shows off the jewelry and says she hopes they have similar tastes. A woman shows off a precious necklace and says it's her favorite piece of jewelry and it looks great on her. A surprised Layla asks what it is, and the woman replies to her that this is her gratitude. The Duchess talks about how she got upset every time he caught up with women saying he didn't want to get married. Hearing this, Lacius says he thinks they were destined to find their man. Layla thanks the woman profusely and says that she's already received many gifts from Duke Hupert. Lacius's mother questions whether it's too rude to call her husband by his title, and he suggests that she call him by his first name. The Duke is pleased to say that he doesn't mind. Concerned, Layla thinks about the fact that, after all, nothing in this world is done for nothing, and if the Duke then asks her for an unfair favor. The Countess, looking at her sister-in-law, says she can feel herself getting dizzy, and asks what she's thinking about. However, it's just a gift for being charming. The main character talks about the fact that she does not have a good past since she is a second-time married. Lacius's mother claims that her future doesn't matter, and because she is loved by Lacius, she will be loved by him. The woman claims that's what any mother would do. The Countess says that if the girl is concerned about her origins, then let her tell her. However, the Hupert family does not tolerate people who disrespect their family. The protagonist wonders why it's so easy. Since her previous life, she never even dreamed of marriage. The girl lived without her mother and suffered because of her father. Countess Hupert asks if these jewels look good, and what kind of dress to choose as a gift. There's no way a woman can make up her mind on one of them. Layla thinks about things being done for the best, and with those very thoughts, he keeps his spirits up. Lacius crouches closer to the protagonist, and he worries about her and asks if everything is okay. The girl replies that everything is fine in her, and don't let him worry because she is not used to this, and it makes the girl a little uncomfortable. The main character sadly thinks that if she had a mom like the Duke, she would have unconditional love. A handsome man asks Layla why she behaves like this, and the girl replies that she is just a little jealous and thus plunged her husband into a misunderstanding. The young lady says she has no family and so she is jealous of such love. Hearing this, Duke takes her hand and calms her down and tells her there is no need to be upset anymore. The Duke is in love with the protagonist and claims that they will become family to each other after the wedding. Layla, hearing those words, smiled in agreement with the Duke. Since it's only been a year, but now she has a family. The Duke offers Layla a 100-year contract extension, as he doesn't want to part with her after a year. The surprised girl asks the Duke if he's joking. The man replies that he is talking to her in complete seriousness. However, they still have time. Duke looks at Layla and asks what she's holding. The girl replies that it's an invitation, and she's thinking about why she's acting like she's seeing him for the first time. The protagonist asks Lacius if he got the invitation. The girl, smiling, says she must attend the event, and asks if he'll keep her company. The Duke answered nothing, and the girl asked him the very same question once more. The man leaned closer to the girl and whispered something in her ear. Upon hearing this, the protagonist, cringing, asks if he threw out the invitation. She realizes he wasn't going to go. The Duke says he's going, and the girl is worried because he threw out the invitation. Layla thinks about the fact that she doesn't want to force him and suggests to the Duke that he shouldn't worry because he can take anyone as a partner. Hearing this, the Duke gets very excited and asks the girl who she will go with, if not him. The young lady looks at the handsome guy and sees that he is upset. She tells the Duke she hasn't thought about it yet. Lacius says instead of going with someone else, he wants to go with Layla. Upon hearing this, the girl replies that she would consider it an agreement to go together. However, the young lady was curious as to why the Duke had clasped her hand so tightly. Lazius drew a revolver from his pocket and set it on the table. Layla asks the gentleman if she can look at the revolver, and he agrees. Examining the gun, the girl marvels as she has not seen such beautiful carvings on the handle. Duke says, wondering if she's interested, and asks if she wants a shot. The young lady asks if it can be done, and the gentleman consents. Holding the revolver in front of her, the Duke notices that she has an excellent grip, and if she fired, the bullet would fly just through the window. Lazius asks where she learned to shoot. The girl thinks about the fact that as a child she practiced to shoot her father one day. However, she didn't think it would be useful to her, since I couldn't kill him. Duke puts his hands on the girl's arms and tells her to shoot with a ring attached to the barrel of the gun. The ring is a substance emanating from the caster's body. It is known for its powerful destructive force. They say it has infinite potential. Duke reports that when the ring pierces the target, it returns, which makes it more convenient than bullets. But not everyone can use it, which makes it extremely rare. In the original, after 8 years, Here created 3 rings, but who is this man really? Lazius talks about how she can't take her eyes off of him and asks if she likes the ring more than his face. The protagonist thinks about the fact that he's getting more and more fit to be a puppy, and the Duke asks her if she treats him like a puppy. On arriving home, the young lady anxiously asks how Here is feeling, and the maid replies that the master is in his room and at the same time asks what she has in her hand. Layla replies that she brought a treat for the boy. Jalen thinks about how much her mistress cares for the boy. The maid talks about not giving the young master too many sweets because with obesity comes serious illness. Layla replies that she'll try not to give anything next time and talks about how he's still too skinny. Entering the boy's room, the protagonist asks what he was doing today, and the young gentleman replies that he was doing nothing. The girl says she bought chocolate pudding and asks if he wants to try it. The boy was very much surprised as he had never tasted chocolate pudding before. The young lady offers him a seat and states that it is a gift from a famous pastry chef and must be delicious, as she hopes he will like it, and let him try. The young gentleman, after eating some, cries out that it is very tasty and he liked it. He suggests that this deliciousness should be tasted by Mom. Hearing this, Layla thought they were finally getting close, and since the boy doesn't trust her yet, but still he tries to get closer. The young gentleman spoon-fed the main character from his hands and eagerly asks if it tastes good. The girl thinks about how the boy must have been worried she'd say no, and she thought of how happy Here would be in a year's time. Tasting the chocolate pudding, Layla says it's delicious and suggests the boy take a walk. However, they can swing on his favorite swing. The young gentleman recalls that Mrs. Marshmallow broke them down, calling them the ugliness of the garden. And it was her personal order. Many years later, he revisited the mansion and created new ones from the branches. However, scars from childhood don't heal quickly. Layla talks about the submission swing and offers to look at it, and if Here wants, they can watch it together. When he came to the garden and saw the new swing, the young gentleman was very excited. The young lady, addressing the boy, says that she has caused him a lot of pain since his father's death, and now he will no longer have to be afraid, since this swing is her apology. Here is very cheerful and says he has a present for him too. The surprised mistress asks if it's for her. The boy runs off and says he'll bring it now. Suddenly, the young gentleman falls and scrapes his knees a little. Layla worriedly asks if he's okay. The girl recalls that, as a child, she also hid her pain because she was afraid of being punished. The young lady wants Here to be happy very badly, and that's why she recognizes herself in him. She hugs the boy since she missed it so much from her father, and suggests to the young gentleman that he should not obsess over the pain within himself, as it is okay to cry and let him not be silent if he is in pain. Watching the boy, Layla thinks she'll do anything to make sure Here gets the love she didn't have. The girl suggests that the boy go back inside since he needs to get his knee checked. Suddenly, the young gentleman, shrieking, asks his mom if he can hold her hand. The young lady replies if he has made up his mind, let him take it. The happy boy has forgotten about the pain as he holds his mom's hand for the first time and walks along with her. Coming to the main room, Her says that he has a gift and he doesn't know if she will like it. That lady replies that she appreciates everything he does. The young gentleman offers his mother a beautiful red rose, the sprig of which he has wrapped with a bow. Layla realized what he was doing in the room since he didn't have time to finish, but give her a gift anyway. Here turns to his mom and says that she gave him macaroons, chocolate pudding, and even a swing, and so he has a very modest gift. The young lady replies that she is very grateful and enjoys it. The young gentleman thought of his mom smiling when she saw his gift. However, the boy wished she would smile more and more often. Sitting with the Duke, the protagonist shows him a piece of paper and tells him that it is a formal contract. The man asks if she is talking about the contract right away. The girl claims it's important and had some tea while doing so. Lacia says in surprise that she's finally drinking, since she didn't drink even the most famous teas, and as expected, she loves sweets. The young man asks if she likes it because he cooked it especially for her. The protagonist looks at the Duke and claims he signed the treaty. The handsome man smiles and says he'll keep him. The girl suggests that it would be best to put it in the Arabald Bank. Lacius claims there is no place safer in the Empire than his home. The protagonist asks if he can answer her question, and he agrees. The girl asks if the gentleman remembers about the ring she mentioned last time. She thought that if Here inherited it earlier than the original, it would be easier for him. And, of course, it's the Duke who knows the most about him. The protagonist asks how many people use the ring, and the agency replies to her that he thinks the girls are very curious. Duke says that all descendants of the Hupert family are familiar with the ring, and he knows how to use it. The girl asks in surprise about something that not all Yupperties can do. Lacius replies that yes, but if he can't use the ring, who is disinherited? Lila thinks about the fact that Lacius has conquered the entire duchy and must be doing better than everyone else. She asks if he can show the ring again, and the guy agrees. After 8 years of hard work, Here had created 3 rings, and by the time he became emperor, he could make 7. However, he didn't do anything wrong either. The protagonist asks that it's not only Hupertas who can control the rings, and how many people are like that. Duke, after a little thought, and says that the ring is very sensitive and there aren't many people who can operate it. Layla thinks about how she can help Hiru if she learns how to control the ring. The girl wonders if she can do it. The master asks if she wants to learn, and the girl agrees. Lacius talks about having one condition, and the surprised young lady asks what it is. The Duke says, pointing his finger to her lips for her to kiss him. Hearing this, Layla excitedly asks if this is a joke. The young guy saw her concern, say he was sorry, but he would be glad to at least see the girl more often. The protagonist agrees with him and says they'll see each other when he has more time. Herzen cries out that they can see each other every day, and he always has time for that. Young lady knows he's busy and asks how many people in the mansion can run the ring. Duke says about 3, and they are Roxanne Stair, Rutger Eckhart, Hyzeth. The main character recalls that it was in the original that they told Hiru about the ring, and the girl asks that he introduce her to them. A surprised Duke says he doesn't want to do that, because he likes to be alone with Layla, and he doesn't want to ruin that idyll. The young lady claims if they get married, she'll meet them anyway, and claims to want to meet with them. And at the same time, the Duke says there's no arguing with her. Hyzeth, turning to Roxanne, cringes asking about the gentleman really getting married, and reads a letter saying that His Highness Mr. Hupert is getting married and have them return as soon as possible. Roxanne, reading the text, says that judging from the text, it is from the Hupert family, and that is the time of the wedding. The girl thinks about the fact that maybe it's just a metaphor, and he wants to create a new alliance. Hyzeth opens up about how the gentleman would never love a woman for anything. Suddenly they saw Lacia smiling with a girl. The Duke offers to introduce the girl to his acquaintances. He says that Hyzeth appears with silver hair, with Rutger and Roxanne standing together. Rutger talks about something happening to the gentleman in his absence. Roxanne reflects on the fact that they have worked hand in hand for decades, and she still doesn't understand what the gentleman needs an escort for. Rutger talks about how she only makes 1 ring. Hearing this, the girl gets very angry and asks him if he wanted to die. Since her brains are completely gone in the plowing, she asks what he's carrying. Rutgi apologized, and the girl warned him to be more careful. The guy with silver hair and talks about how he hasn't found a trace of the shadow. Upon hearing this, Roxanne angrily asks if maybe he just didn't notice. Roxanne thinks about the rest of the guys since Hyzeth just got back and didn't find anything. A few days before the Hillen family event, the protagonist decided to learn more about the aristocrats. She read every letter she could find on the estate. Among them was a very strange one. The letter was anonymous, as if from an admirer, and the girl thinks about who might have sent it. All her thoughts, however, were interrupted by Countess Nephili, who is very famous in social circles. Miss Edith smilingly turns to the protagonist and talks about how she doesn't want to seem very rude, but she still has one question she wants to ask her. Layla, who is willing to dialogue, says let her ask. Miss Edith says she has heard that the young lady is remarrying and whether it is true. The protagonist replies that she expected such a question and is willing to answer that it is true. Upon hearing this, the other ladies were very surprised, since it had not been that long since her husband's death. Because at this time, behind the back of the protagonist began to gossip about how she wants to return secular society, as it is very terrible. Layla, continuing her conversation with the blue-haired lady, and tells her that she is close to Duke Hubert's family, and so the news has reached her. Upon hearing this, Edita can't believe that the protagonist is marrying a duke. And again, rumors began to circulate as the duke rejected the princess, and this led to the confusion of the aristocratic ladies. Edita turns to the ladies and tells them to keep their voices down. The blue-haired miss says that she is not surprised since Layla has such an amazing charm that even Hertz Hubert couldn't resist. Since the original Edith was like that too. The protagonist thought that something wasn't right here and she'd better not get involved yet. She'd talk less to Edita, saying she has a case and will be back soon. Layla's attention was drawn to a man on whose jacket she saw the Blake family crest. The girl was not at all sure, but thought the man was Baron Doug Blake. Seeing the girl, the Baron, confidently approaching her, and at this time the protagonist thinks about whether Lady Marshmallow is familiar with this man. Coming closer to the girl, the man greets Yo and asks if by chance they have met before. The protagonist is anxiously thinking about what she should do. She realized that she needed to stay calm because in the original, Layla had never met him, the main character, and tells the man so they haven't even met it, can't even be that. Hearing this, the Baron apologized to her for disturbing her. Layla looked at the man and had some unpleasant feeling that seemed awfully familiar to the girl. A young girl, and she thinks it's because the man is the same age as her father. Suddenly, the Countess felt her hand being taken by someone and she turned around to see the Duke. The girl, cringing, asks what this obscene behavior is. The young man says with great pleasure that he has been sorely missed. Layla tells him it hasn't been a day since they last met, and thinks about the fact that he was introducing her to Rutger and Roxanne just yesterday. Leaning closer to the girl, Lysias talks about how their separation lasts forever for him. He took the girl's hand, and she thought about the fact that they were hunting in a corner, and it was so that hardly anyone would notice. However, seeing the stares of the guests, the protagonist tells the Duke that everyone is looking at them. He replies that he doesn't care since they're together. Seeing the worried girls, Layla suggests, since there are too many extra eyes there, so they better go somewhere else. Lacius agrees, and in doing so says, "Don't let the girl say she likes hairy men with potbellies." Upon hearing this, the protagonist cringes at what nonsense he's talking about. However, when I looked at the Baron, I realized who he was talking about. The Duke, turning to the girl, says that he thinks that man has excited her very much, and they even merged in conversation. Layla looked at him in surprise and thought about the Duke being jealous. The girl started laughing, and in doing so surprised Lysias. She talks about how she doesn't care one bit about the Baron. The Duke suggests that the young lady pay more attention to him, and the girl thought about how he reminded her even more of a puppy. Walking to the mansion, Layla asks the Duke why he showed up so late. The young man replies that he had a few things to do and was looking for something. However, it didn't work out. The protagonist says it must be Lysias in search of a shadow. Since the shadow is so-called cursed ring, and unlike the usual, it does not return, but remains floating in space. Curse rings feed off of normal rings, and a normal ring loses power. The owners of the regular rings began to complain. Rutherg and Hizet have been tasked with finding the shadows, but it's not easy. However, Layla thought about the fact that she had never met Hizet, and she really wanted to see him. Upon seeing Mrs. Hilna, the protagonist thought that this woman was a key figure in the discovery of the Lysias mine. The girl is about to go, and the Duke asks where she is going. Layla replies that Mrs. Hiln has arrived and she will help retrieve the mine. However, the protagonist is detained by the Duke and proposes to her that she kiss him. Hearing this, Layla was very surprised, and it seemed that he wasn't joking. At this time, the young couple were watched by Edith, who thought their engagement a mere show, but she, full of feeling. Love used to be completely out of character for Layla Marshmallow. However, things have changed in a rather entertaining way. Edith thought of the kind of Layla she liked. However, the young lady touched her hand to the Duke's face and apologized, indicating that this would not do. The girl informs him that they will meet later and everyone has their own business to attend to, since she'll be back a little later. The main character saw Mrs. Hilna and greeted her. The lady, addressing the young lady, says she has heard that she is remarried and let her accept her congratulations. Layla thanked her mistress, but noticed that Hilna kept looking at someone and that person was Dawson Hilna. The young lady noticed that they didn't have a very good relationship. She guessed things were strained there, but she hadn't even considered that mistress would show her dislike so openly. A woman with red hair addresses Layla and says she can just call her Madame Hiln. The protagonist thought about how she wished she could change where she was talking. However, it seemed to her that Madame wanted to peep at Dawson. Hilna says she wanted to inquire about marriage, and it seems to her that the young lady supports Duke Hubert. A surprised Layla asks how she found out, and mistress answers her that the Count is staring at her. The young lady suggests a change of scenery as she has something she wants to talk about. Miss Hilney asked about whether this concerns her. The woman agreed and offered to follow her. The women seclude themselves in a large room, and Layla questions Madame as to whether she wishes to take the lead. A surprised Hilna asks what she's up to and why she's brought her here. Layla calms her down and says she just wants to settle since she thinks that, and the woman is perfect for the position. Miss Hilney replies that she needs to think about it. However, asks the question if this is true, will Layla be able to realize it? The protagonist talks about having the ability to give mistress what she desires and offers to negotiate. Madame Hilna, looking carefully at the girl, says she will confide in her and asks what exactly she is interested in. The young lady replies that she is interested in Dawson's black diamond, and if she gets hold of it, she'll own the mine. Lila assures that the woman can rely on her as she will raise her to the top position within a year. Upon hearing this, Helm smiled pleasantly and shook hands with the Countess. Rutger, turning to the Duke, asks if he can hear him. Lassius replies that he doesn't want to hear him since he has disturbed his and Layla's peace. Suddenly, Lassius turns to Rutger and says that he has found the day and have him call Roxanne. He asks if they can manage without him. The Duke tells him that Roxanne will be enough and tells him to take better care of Layla and return. The protagonist asks Rutger if the Duke has left on business. He replies that Lassius had urgent business and asked him to take care of the Countess. The man offers to let the formalities go, and the girl agrees. The young lady is concerned as to why the gentleman left so suddenly. However, since it is so urgent, Canada guesses that he has found a shadow. Rutger reassures the girl and tells her not to worry since Roxanne is next to the gentleman. The man says it would be better if he and Hyseth were still around, but since he has to look after her and Hyseth isn't at the event today. Rutger talks about how Hyseth is one of their knights. Layla claims she just hasn't met him yet. The man says that is exactly what happened since he was away on business that day. The young lady thinks about the fact that this was her second favorite character after Hera. However, it would be sad if they didn't meet. The girl thought that maybe she could still see him, and asked Rutger if he could introduce her to Hyseth.